All right, well, I'd like to start off by saying good morning to everyone who's physically here and to everyone who's out there in virtual land who's participating in our meeting this morning. And welcome you to our October 15th, 2020 TPA Governing Board meeting. A couple of things I need to share in regarding the Governor's Executive Order number 20-69 and the TPA Emergency Order number 2020-04. The Department of TPA is conducting this meeting virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. Instructions to join this meeting, and as well as how to contact information and assistance. Can you hear me okay? Is that better? Do I need to start over?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Assistance is provided and published in the meeting agenda. I will ask you to note that some members of the governing board are attending the meeting in person, but the TPA board members will also be participating in the meeting this morning remotely, either via webcam or telephone. Additionally, scheduled presentations may be participating in person or remotely. A couple of items I want to share with you is regarding public comment. There are three basic ways we're going to take public comment. One is written comments may be submitted online at the website provided in the agenda. The other way is verbal comments may be made by a virtual attendee using the raise hand feature in the Zoom platform. Our meeting coordinator will acknowledge your hand is raised and announce, and then we'll give you the opportunity to take a 3-minute moment to share your comments. And lastly, verbal or written items submitted online at the website provided in the agenda. Okay. Verbal and written comments may be provided by an in-person attendee submitting a comment card at the welcome table when you come in. With that, is Mayor Wilson on yet?
Yes, I do have Mayor Wilson. And Mayor, I believe you're calling in by phone, so if you can hit *6 on your phone to unmute.
Mayor Wilson, are you there?
It's still showing that he's muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, we
Yes.
hear you now, sir. Mayor Wilson, will you give us the pleasure of providing a prayer and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we're here once again with bowed heads and humble hearts, thanking you for your grace and your mercy. And as always, Father, realizing that through your grace and your mercy, you've been better to us than we've been to ourselves. And with that, we say thank you. Thank you, Father, for giving us what we need to navigate our struggles and hardships, especially during times like these. Help us to remember your promises and to trust in you when we are afraid. Father, you know it's easy for us to be discouraged in hard times. Help us to place our hope in you in every season of our life, and help us to share with others the place, the peace in life with you. And finally, Father, we say to you, how amazing you are to always hear our prayers. We praise you because we know our prayers are always precious to you. Thank you for what you have revealed to us, which brings us hope. It brings us peace. It brings us joy, and it brings us love. We ask a special prayer for our chairperson and all of us who you have allowed to be assembled here today. As you know, we're no strangers to each other, just proud friends who have not yet met. We give you all the praises and the glory. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor, for that prayer. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask that Margie take roll call.
Yes, sir. Joseph Anderson, and I'm sorry, I will need you to unmute on your end, and if you're present on behalf of a representative, if you can please note that, and my staff will also assist you in unmuting. So Joseph Anderson, Mary Lou Berger, I believe we have Commissioner Bernard on behalf of her, but I will come back while he
Commissioner McBernard on behalf of Commissioner Mary Lou Berger.
Thank you. Joni Brinkman. Here. Joel Flores.
Present.
Stephen Graham,
Present.
Jim Kerensky,
Present.
Douglas Lawson, Carl Wood, Melissa McKinley, Michael
Here.
Napoli, thank you, Michael Napoleon,
I'm here.
Corey Neary,
Present.
Joseph Paduzzi, Shelley Petrolia,
Here.
Fred Pinto,
Here.
Scott Singer,
Here.
Andy Thompson,
Thankful to be here.
Pam Triolo,
Here.
Hal Valashay,
Here.
Robert Weinroth,
Here.
Greg Weiss,
Here.
Steve Wilson. And Mayor Wilson, you got muted again. If you can hit *6 to unmute on your end, please.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Marge. Okay. At this time, are there any reasons that we need to make any modifications to today's agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. Marge, I will ask you, we're providing an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have any received comments on items not on the agenda?
We do not have any emailed comments, but I do have a virtual comment from a Kevin Cairo.
Okay.
So Kevin, I will unmute. I'm sorry. Is this a general public comment? I have one in person, sir,
Okay.
and then I also have one virtual. So while he's filling in his card, we can take the virtual one
That's
first.
the virtual one, okay.
Kevin, you will need to unmute on your end, and we are giving you 3 minutes for your public comment.
Hi, I'm Kevin Cairo in Point Beach at 9680 Lago Drive, zip code 33472. I just wanted to make a general comment because I only recently learned about the TPA and have been reviewing the plans and attending the committee virtual meetings this month. I learned about the TPA through greenwaystimulus.org, where the TPA is a supporting organization. The nature of my comment is basically I like to ride my bike. I am not a sports cyclist, but rather I really like to ride my bike just for practical reasons. And what I wanted to kind of put out there is that, you know, I really would love to see the TPA and the county doing things to make cycling safer and more practical. It's really disheartening to see that, you know, in general, Florida and South Florida are really unsafe for cyclists and pedestrians. And I know the TPA knows this, but, you know, I'm a resident and I care, and I'm putting it out there that, you know, it matters to me. And when I look at the LRTP, I see a lot of promising verbiage that indicates, you know, a strong understanding of things like how important safety is to cycling ridership. But, you know, at the same time, I look at the goals that it projects for 2030 and 2045 and feel that the goals don't reflect understanding of how important safety is. When a lot of, you know, designated bike lane miles are being added, but not nearly as many separated bike lanes. And, you know, with the speed limits we have throughout the county, even buffered bike lanes just don't feel safe. And, you know, furthermore, I think focusing on practicality is really, really valuable because people can bike for leisure, and that's great. But if people find it practical, they're going to bike more, and there's safety in numbers in cycling. That's about it for me for now, but you'll probably hear from me in months ahead. I'll continue to dial in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. We have another gentleman who's here who has a comment. You have a comment card?
Thank you. You also 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Matthew Van Voorheisen. I live at 302 North B Street, Lake Worth Beach, Florida, 33460. I definitely agree with the previous speaker. I love to ride my bike to get places. It's a great way to keep me healthy and to avoid the expense of a car, and also to avoid endangering other people. In particular, I'm interested in what's going on in Lake Worth Beach, which is, in my opinion, the most walkable and bikeable city in the county. But there is still some room for improvement. I would love to see that we would restrict the car traffic in roads like Dixie Highway, 10th Avenue North, 6th Avenue South, and Lake Worth Road. The cars are going through there way too fast, and they just have way too much space. If we could give some of that space to pedestrians and bicyclists who can sometimes barely even get past each other on the sidewalk, that would really, really help. And I just hope that you could at least start with maybe converting some through lanes to turn lanes so that the cars have a reason to slow down a little more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I just want to share that to both of the comments that were made. Executive Director has taken notes. This is an item that is, he keeps in front of us, this board, about our overall goal is to make all streets and communities livable for biking and pedestrians as well. So thank you very much. Are there any further comments from the public as items on the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'm closing public comment items not on the agenda. With that, now, any comments that anyone wants to make on items that are on the agenda, those opportunities for those comments will be made at comment time when we review that particular, get to that particular agenda item. So if there are no questions, we'll move forward. We're on item 1F on our agenda, and it says your comments from the chair and members on the board. I'd like to just open up with some thoughts that, first of all, I'm honored to have the privilege of being the chair for this very fine and important, robust body at this board. And I'm excited about the opportunities in front of us as we go forward as a board and collectively determine projects and initiatives that will hopefully benefit and improve the quality of life for all of our constituents in all of our towns across this county. I look forward to us working together. I would look forward to us challenging each other and making sure that if we're not doing anything else, that we're living up to the things that we say we want to be about, that the initiatives and visions that we have are not just talk, that we really want to move from talking about it to actionable items. And then there'll be times where we have to challenge ourselves and say, you know what, we're going to do something different that we haven't done before. We're going down a new path. And it'll range from anything from opening up. I think it's important to get more input and feedback from the cities that are being impacted by different projects that we're looking at, as well as looking at new ways where we need to come up with funding that we don't have now because of the way the rules are written to fund initiatives that we believe are important to move this county forward. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be challenging, and I look forward to it. With that, I'll open the floor. Any members on the board have any comments they'd like to make at this time? Anyone out there in Zoom land wants to make a comment?
I see no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then, we'll move forward. Thank you. Item 1G is a report from our executive director. Nick, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the TPA board assembled here in person, and those of you joining us virtually, and members of the public as well as our partners. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I have a handful of items I wanted to touch on. First, the TPA staff has grown by 2 positions. We're excited to welcome James Reinhardt to the TPA as our new lead planner and transit coordinator, a very important role for the TPA in the conversations that we're having about investing in multimodal transportation. And then also Kelsey Peterson joins us as a Transportation Planner 1 on our multimodal team. Again, we're really excited to have them, looking forward to their leadership and the initiatives that they help us implement as we collaboratively improve the transportation system for Palm Beach County. I mentioned James comes to us from Indianapolis. Kelsey comes to us from Charlotte, North Carolina. So we have imported talent through internal migration within the country, but outside of Florida, we're excited to have them here. And their perspectives will be a little different, and we hope to learn from their ideas and the things that they have seen go well in those 2 areas. A federal funding update, wanted to mention it. I told the board last month that we were on the precipice of an expiration of federal funds. The FAST Act, which is the current surface transportation authorization bill, expired September 30th. And on September 30th, the Senate passed an extension, a 1-year extension that would allow for temporary funding for highway and transit programs and projects to continue. So we are operating on a 1-year extension at this point. That's not atypical, unfortunately, but we would like the certainty of a long-term bill, and we're continuing to work with our congressional delegation on the details of a potential long-term transportation funding bill. I wanted to mention too, Smart Growth America created a program called Active People, Healthy Nation, the Champions Institute, to help educate local elected officials in how to push forward with this initiative that we call Complete Streets and how to improve safety on our transportation facilities. They asked for applications this past month for elected officials from across the country. They selected 21 elected officials, one of whom is our own TPA Governing Board representative and City of Boca Raton Council member, Andy Thompson. So I wanted to give him a shout out and say we're excited to have him participate in this program and glad that he was willing to make himself available for the application process. Reminding the board that DOT is conducting what they're calling the Transportation Planning Exchange, or Transplex for short. It's a series of webinars that they're conducting on Friday mornings. And those are going to occur Friday mornings. I believe they start at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And details are available at that Transplex website provided in the report. If you're available on Friday morning and would like to register for one of the upcoming webinars, please take that opportunity and do so. Next item, very important one for us, is we are conducting, and I'm waiting on the slide to move forward. Okay, we are conducting a lane repurposing workshop. We're actually bringing down a representative from the Federal Highway Administration to share stories about lane repurposing projects and help understand the process, the analysis necessary to determine whether or not a lane repurposing project, the idea of taking a roadway that has travel lanes devoted primarily to vehicles in its current condition and repurposing some of that space for other uses, whether they be bike lanes, whether they be wider sidewalks, shared use pathways, on-street parking, furnishing zones for pedestrian safety and pedestrian comfort, any of those types of things. We're actually conducting a workshop on November 2nd. We're conducting a workshop on Friday, November 6th, but registration closes on November 2nd. We hope to see several of our TPA Governing Board members participate, as well as our staff and stakeholder agencies. I know we've got a number of folks from the DOT signed up to participate in that, and look forward to having any of our municipal or county staff participate in that as well. Wanted to mention the DOT is pushing for a statewide celebration called Mobility Week 2020. It's a celebration of making smart, efficient, and safe transportation choices. The emphasis period is October 30th through November 6th. So that's a very important initiative. It's a statewide initiative, and we want to do all we can to support that with local activities and events here in Palm Beach County. And then one of the outcroppings of that is the state DOT has actually partnered with a Love to Ride Florida Challenge. They're hosting this as a statewide initiative. This has been done on a citywide basis in other parts of the country, pushing for people to get out and try bicycling, and then track the number of miles that they have accumulated riding their bicycles as individuals and as teams. And so if your municipality, if the county is not hosting a team and you want to join the TPA team as elected officials on this governing board, we may let you on our team. But we do want to encourage you, whether you join as local governments, whether you join as the TPA, to get out and ride, to take an opportunity and give it a chance. And that's going to be going on for the entirety of the month of November. You can register on the website in the report, and we look forward to your participation. Also mention that October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. We are focusing efforts on raising awareness year-round to reduce deaths, educate road users, and remind us that at some point in a trip, everyone is a pedestrian. So we have a website again there, and want to bring attention to the importance of building a system that promotes pedestrian safety, reminding especially our local governments and our county that Safe Routes to School grant, the DOT has a statewide program, a Safe Routes to School grant they have created using federal safety funds So these would be projects that would be constructed by local governments using a LAP agreement, federal safety funds, and they are accepting applications for project funding through the end of this calendar year, through December 31st. And then lastly, I want to make sure that I ask you again to save the date for our 2021 Safe Street Summit. As a reminder, the Safe Street Summit is a partnership. It's a formal partnership between the 3 Southeast Florida MPOs, the Broward MPO, the Miami-Dade TPO, and the Palm Beach TPA. We put this on annually. It's an all-day event on Friday, January 29th, with a part-day event on Thursday, January 28th. If I didn't get the days of the week right, I apologize, but it's part-day mobile workshops and all-day presentations. And we hope that you will save the date for that. It will be a virtual event this January, but we are looking forward to a lot of participants, both in the Southeast Florida region and throughout the country, joining us for that event. I have a couple more items. I believe they may have made it into the presentation. Alyssa, if you can go. I just wanted to give a quick heads up. DOT is counting information, is collecting information. Go back one, there we go, stop right there. DOT is capturing traffic count information on a continuous basis, and they are publishing that information. Looks like maybe there's an automatic advance on here, so we'll do our best to hold the slide. I wanted to mention, because we're collecting information, we're comparing it to previous years and watching the pandemic impacts as they occur and as they are sort of dissipating with the entry into phase 3. And so right now, I-95 in Jupiter is actually higher than it was this time last year. Very interesting to note. It's actually, we're up around 4 or 5% over the previous year's counts. What we haven't noted is the return to the full peak hour impacts. So we're still seeing some of those folks who are able to commute virtually, who are able to work from home. They are still working from home, but throughout the day, the traffic counts have actually gone up in northern Palm Beach County. When you get into central Palm Beach County, we'll go to the next slide, in between Okeechobee and Palm Beach Lakes, we're still down around 5%, but we're getting very close to those historic numbers. And then when you go west on State Road 80, we're down about 5% as well. And so I just wanted to make the board aware of that. We are paying close attention to that on particular locations, but we're also monitoring information on a countywide basis, maybe not on a daily scale, but we have that data and we are happy to share it with you if you have any particular questions as we monitor the recovery of travel demand from the pandemic impacts. And Mr. Chair, that does conclude my report.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Eddie. I'd just like to make a comment and say welcome to the new members on the TPA team. We're excited to have you here and hope you find this to be a challenging endeavor in your career. And I'd like to say congratulations as well to Councilmember Thompson, Andy Thompson. I'm sure you're going to be challenged in working in with this group. Since it's a 6-month tour, we look forward to your input and feedback and maybe recommendations that some of us should consider that as well. Thank you. Are there any comments from other members on the board on the executive director's report?
I don't see any hands raised, Chair, but I did get a comment from the public that wishes to speak on this item.
On the report?
On this executive director's report, yes.
Okay, let's acknowledge that.
Sir, if you could please come to the podium. You can just state your name for the record.
Hi, once again, my name is Matthew Repurposing from Lake Worth Beach. I just wanted to also, while I'm here, say hello to my mayor, Pam Triola. I'm glad that you're a part of this as well. I was just, as I was listening to the executive report there, a couple things struck my attention. At some point in a trip, everyone is a pedestrian. This is very true, and that's actually why I made my previous comments, because as a bicyclist, it's not really so hard to cross Dixie Highway. But as a pedestrian, if you are between traffic lights, it's very, very difficult. And if we were to narrow the lanes on Dixie Highway so that it's one lane in each direction, It would really, really help pedestrians to get across. And it also relates to some other things I heard in there about investing in transportation. There's no point investing in transportation if we don't take care of the pedestrian first. Because once they get off their bicycle or once they get off the bus, how are they gonna get where they're actually trying to go? We need to make sure we're taking care of the pedestrian. The other thing is we were talking about the traffic on I-95, and that has definitely concerned me. I want people to be able to get where they're going. And I thought it was very interesting that traffic is shifting. They're getting on the highway at different times so that there's still capacity for them like there was before. And this is actually something that we have control over. On the turnpike, we use tolls. I don't see why we can't use tolls on I-95. If there's something that's getting in the way of that, I'd like to know what it is. But I would really like us to move toward having tolls on I-95 so that we can better manage the traffic that's there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments, sir. All right, no other comments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no comments on the board. All right, we'll move to item 1H. And here,
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
for a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All
So I have
right,
a motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth and a second by Councilwoman Brinkman.
all right, now this is the consent agenda. We need to take a roll call.
No, Mr. Chair, we will unmute all and they can say verbal.
Is everyone
yes or no.
unmuted?
Okay, they should be unmuting on their end.
Everyone's unmuted. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? There's no opposed. Why don't you please let the record show that the consent agenda was approved unanimously. All right, item number 1, section 2, action items. And the first item is item 2A, which is to open the floor for nominations for vice chair. And I just want to explain, this is a nomination to fulfill the remainder of the 2020 term. And with that said, I think, Nick, have you informed all of the board members who are eligible because they've gotten the education requirements completed?
I can't say that I've spoken with every one of them, but I've spoken with most of them. And the list of eligible candidates is included in the packet as well.
Okay, so with that, yes,
Mayor, I do have 2 hands raised.
okay.
So I have Commissioner Weiss and Councilman Napoleon.
All right, let's hear their comments, or their nominations.
Commissioner Weiss, if you want to go first, you are first on my list.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Vice Mayor Weinroth.
And Councilman Napoleon.
I was going to nominate Mayor Singer.
Oh, wait, hold on. I need to, hold on. Where's my hand? Oops.
If you have comments, Mayor Singer, I can see your virtual hand raised.
I thank you. Yes, I can't, I have to put my literal hand up. Thank you, Commissioner Napoleon. I think I'd rather not be considered for this position at this time. Mayor Stephen Grant had expressed an interest in greater leadership roles in this body, so I'd like to nominate him.
Thank you. Where's my hand raised?
It's okay, you can go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Singer. Yes. Yeah, I'd be interested. I understand that, in a couple months, we may have to do this over again. So I know this is just a short time as well.
Okay, so we have 2 nominations on the floor?
Yes, Mayor. We have Commissioner Weiss nominated Vice Mayor Weinroth and Mayor Singer nominated Mayor Grant.
Okay, are there any additional or further nominations? If not, I will close the floor to nominations. All right, seeing none, we have none. All right, we'll close the floor for nominations. Now, we have to take a roll call vote on the two nominees.
Yes, and to make it easier, if you can just state the last name of either Weinroth or Grant, when we do the roll call, that way it's easier for me to note it and then we can tally it.
All right, so just to repeat, indicate the nominee you're voting for when your name is called. Okay, Marge?
Okay, so my staff will assist you with unmuting, but like I noted, if you can either state Weinroth or Grant for your vote, I would appreciate it. Commissioner Joseph Anderson is absent. Mac Bernard. Okay, he's still muted. We'll move forward. Joni Brinkman. Joel Flores.
Weinroth.
Stephen Grant.
Grant.
Jim Koretsky.
Weinroth.
Douglas Lawson. I believe he's still absent. Carl Woods. I believe he's absent as well. Melissa McKinley.
Weinroth.
Michael Napoleon.
Grant.
Corey Nearing. Joseph Peduzzi. I believe he's absent. Shelley Petroleum.
It's a tough one. I'm going to go with Grant.
Fred Pinto.
Grant?
Scott Singer.
Grant.
Andy Thompson.
Weinroth.
Pam Triolo.
Grant.
Al Valashe.
Weinroth.
Robert Weinroth.
Weinroth.
Greg Weiss.
Weinroth.
Steve Wilson. And Mayor, if you can hit *6 on your phone. We muted you on our end.
Weinroth.
Thank you. And to go back, because I am showing there present Commissioner Nearing, are you able to unmute? As well as Commissioner Bernard, are you able to unmute for your vote? Otherwise, we will move forward and mark you as absent. So Mayor, they're not, we have prompted them on our end, but I'm not showing that they're unmuting. So if you want to move forward, and we'll just mark them as absent from the voting.
Give them one more chance. Going once, going twice. Are you there? Hit the unmute. *6. Nothing? Okay. Let's count the votes we have, and we'll move forward.
Butler in blue.
Who was that? What did you say?
You don't have to apologize.
I think, Mayor Wilson, I'm going to mute you on my end.
Mr. Chair, I have 9 votes for Weinroth, 6 for Grant.
Thank you.
Okay, well, congratulations to Vice Mayor Weinroth. You're now back here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, hold on a second, let me check this. Item 2B, I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution supporting the Southeast Florida Transportation Council report. We're going to get a report from Jessica. Please come join us. She's the RTP consultant from Kittleson and Associates.
Thank you. Is the video? Yes. Okay, great. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm honored to be presenting the Regional Transportation Plan. Before diving into the presentation, I just wanted to remind you, for those that have been on the board for a while, potentially it's new to some of you, that this effort actually began in 2017, where Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade collectively agreed to move forward on conducting this regional transportation plan. And Chairman, your words in the beginning really are prominent and reflected in this transportation plan. It's a plan of action. So as you see in the resolution today, we are asking an action be taken to endorse this plan. And there are policies within it that I will be walking through that we intend as a region to take to Tallahassee and speak to state representatives about. So I'm excited to walk through this with you. So just as a reminder, what is the Southeast Florida Transportation Council? This is a council that was formally created in 2005 through a memorandum of understanding between the Palm Beach TPA, Broward MPO, and Miami-Dade TPO. Vice Mayor Weinroth has participated on that council, and also your past TPA chair, Maria Marino. So I want to thank them for their efforts over the past couple of years as we work together as a team to prepare this plan. Also, SEPTEC is made up of a technical committee made up of Nick Uren, your executive director, and supporting staff in front of you today, and also technical staff from, again, Broward MPO and Miami-Dade TPO. So now diving into the plan, I just want to walk through some of the elements, and then at the end we'll go through the policies. So the first step I want to highlight to you all is we collectively as a region defined what is regional in terms of the transportation system. This was a data-driven objective analysis where we all agreed that the facilities carrying the most people and goods essentially is what makes up the regional network. You can see on the map there to the left. It includes roadway, rail, waterway, and hubs. I want to note that this is important, this exercise, because there is a pot of money, although small, attached to this regional network, and it's your Transportation Regional Incentive Program. If that rings a bell, in the past you've approved projects to receive that funding. So now moving forward, the next important step in the Regional Transportation Plan was the development of goals and objectives and performance measures. I do want to note that the 4 goals that you see there, multimodal system and land use, health, environment, and safety, economy, and equity and public support, are all goals consistent with your long-range transportation plan, Broward's, and Miami-Dade's as well. 3 things we highlighted though that we felt we could really focus on in terms of how to achieve these goals was looking more streamlined at transit needs, funding needs, and then land use needs that are needed to achieve these 4 goals that ultimately help us achieve more sustainability and a better quality of life in South Florida. But before diving into how to achieve those goals, we first walk through what the issues or obstacles were in front of us. So as a region, we're looking at a significant growing population. So right now, I think we sit at about 6.1 million across the 3 counties, and that's going to increase to about 7.5 by the year 2045. So that's about 1,000 people a week that we're trying to plan for in terms of transportation system and movement. Now, the next problem we need to solve is the mismatched investments. And this, I mean, here is when we did our regional assessment of what we funded versus what our needs were, we actually had unfunded needs at about 86 to 98% being transit. So we unfunded about 98% of our transit needs, but when we looked at what we funded, only about 14% were transit. So as a region, we acknowledged this several years ago and are using this plan as a way to try to solve that through policy. The next is limited access. So we have limited walkable access to transit today. We have about 5% access from home to premium transit walking and about 10% to jobs. So this was another obstacle that we were trying to tackle in this plan development. So how did we go about trying to identify with a broad brush stroke using a data-driven analysis to solve these challenges? So we did this through what we call scenario planning, and we developed 3 scenarios, and the key variables that we looked at in these scenarios was what type of transit network could support the movement of 7.5 million people, what type of land use would be needed to complement that transit and support safe access to the system, and then lastly, how would we fund that system? So the 3 scenarios you see on the right, the first scenario, scenario 1, is our trend scenario. So that's our status quo. If we continue with how we've been investing and our current development patterns, what would that generate? And then scenario 2 is looking at a regional transit scenario. And that's where we essentially, through a data-driven analysis and working with TPA staff, identified your 561 plan for Palm Beach County specifically in terms of transit. Also in scenario 2, we looked at funding scenarios and how we can create flexibility in our current funding structure in the easiest way possible. I don't think any of it's going to be easy, but we tried to identify the lowest hanging fruit there. And then also any potential new revenue sources to build and maintain that transit system. And then in the third scenario, growth and development, it was essentially the same as scenario 2, but added the third component of land use, where we made some testing assumptions for this new growth. If we put it around the transit corridors, primarily in suburban, urban, and urban core fashion, depending where you are in the region, how would that impact how we move the 7.5 million people? So in terms of the results, on the left here, scenario 1 status quo, you see the ridership for a high capacity transit system, and then your walkable access from home and jobs is on the lower end. So if we don't do anything, we didn't see maybe the effectiveness of moving the 7.5 million people. But when you look on the right, the growth and development, so if we build your 561 plan, we find the money to do so, and we change our development patterns to fit within the community design that we have today, but in a transit complementary way, your ridership goes up about 350%, and your access from home walking to transit is about 35% from 5%, and then walkable access to jobs from high capacity to transit goes from 10% to 50%. So we've significantly increased through our testing the access to transit. So that was, again, a broad brushstroke scenario planning exercise just to test if we changed our future, as you were saying in the beginning, Chairman, take on that challenge of thinking differently. We did see positive results. This slide is showing what we actually ended up funding outside the scenario planning through our cost feasible plan exercise. And we are moving in the direction of multimodal. The lion's share is still in roadway and freight, which is still very important to our region and moving us and connecting us to jobs. So about 76% of our funding went to that across the 3 counties. But you see transit went up to about 18%. I previously noted the last plan we were about 14%. So we are seeing that shift. And then you can see complete streets was about 4%, and then systems management, some more of your signal projects was at 2%. So I do want to note that most of you have been part of taking strides towards being more multimodal for years now, and this is just a slide recognizing all the hard work we've done to try to stay ahead of this population growth and keep us mobile, connected to jobs, access to healthcare, essential services, et cetera, over time. So we should be proud of what we've done, and we're excited that this plan can help us continue moving towards that goal. So now getting into the policies that are part of the plan that we're seeking your endorsement today, I just wanted to walk through that with you again. These were crafted based on the analysis we did in the scenario planning exercise. So the first policy is related to the transit network. And our recognition is that regional transit with supporting infrastructure is key to support growth and long-term mobility, again, to move the 7.5 million residents anticipated coming to Southeast Florida. We noted in this policy that there will always be a demand for auto travel, and we wanted to make sure that in our policies we weren't sending a misconstrued message that everyone will be riding a bus. We do know that we need to accommodate a diverse community and diverse modes, so that was important to include in there. And then the last bullet on this policy, I actually wanted to thank Vice Mayor Weinroth for bringing this to our attention in one of our staff tech meetings. And that's that the first last mile is extremely important. And without a safe first last mile, we can't get to the buses or the rail. So I do appreciate him mentioning that, and it was incorporated into this policy.
I just want to interject here. I'm so glad you did that, sir, because it's something we've talked about, and from a strategic perspective, that has got to be part of a policy concept that we need to get all of the cities to buy into, as well as Oregon County.
Yeah.
Good point. I'm sorry, I want to interrupt.
I'm just going to follow up on the chair's remarks. I mean, certainly I've been a strong advocate of public transportation. As everybody knows, I've been on the PTSB, and I'm certainly a champion for both Tri-Rail, Brightline, and for Palm Tran. And if we are able to meet the needs of our stakeholders as far as first and last mile, and especially in our urban areas, getting people from public transportation to their destination. We're going to be able to move more people off the roads onto public transportation. But at the same time, we have to recognize with the pandemic, people are certainly less inclined to go into enclosed spaces with people they don't know. So we're going to have to look at the new world post-pandemic and see how we're going to be able to embrace this and, again, do this economically. Right now, our public transportation is striving to be able to move people safely in a healthy fashion. But again, with the spacing requirements, it's becoming more difficult. Obviously, we're at a situation now where people are being left at bus stops when the transportation needs start to increase as people are going back to work. So we have a lot of factors there we're going to have to bring into this conversation. And I think COVID has really changed the landscape that we're going to now have to address in a reasonable fashion.
Yes, thank you for those comments. And we are tracking as a region and the transit agencies, the research being done on health impacts for transit riders to continue monitoring that. So excellent points, and it's important to mention as we do this outreach, and we can't ignore it. It's sitting in front of us, we're all wearing masks. So
hopefully,
right there.
Hopefully at some point we'll get beyond this.
Yes,
right now,
yes.
we have to persevere. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, this is our long-term vision for, I don't have children, but people in the room do, so for your grandkids, et cetera. So thinking long-term, but understanding the immediate in front of us. So the second policy is complementary land use is essential. And I know this is a really complex, hard thing to take on, but the region couldn't go through this planning effort without recognizing how important land use is to having a successful, safe multimodal system that we can walk to and bike to. So that recognition is there. For the sub-bullet B, it's saying a majority of new development should occur around existing and future high-capacity transit routes. This item, actually, Vice Mayor Reinroth, you also noted to be very intentional on the words we're using, because if we say density, some people might be thinking we're going to force a New York City style in our communities, and that's not the desire in many communities. So in our exercise, we did take note of existing kind of patterns, whether it's suburban, urban, or urban core, and we applied assumptions based on those already existing kind of styles and desires of communities. So that was placed into the process, but the details and how we go about this, there's a long road ahead of us, but again, we just had to recognize how important this is. And the last goes to the comments made earlier, is the short walk bike trips. Our modeling capabilities we have in the transportation industry don't do a great job at identifying culture shift where people maybe want to start using transit and walking and biking more than they do today. So the numbers in the report aren't great, but we just know, looking at other regions and human behavior, that we can expect walking and biking to significantly increase as well through these policy changes and the ultimate investments that we do. We've been disconnected, but the third policy is increased flexibility in funding. And what we are trying to do here is recognize that the reason we're making the investments we're making today is because there is some restriction or too much restriction on our funding. Specifically, we're mentioning here state funding programs, and the DOT has been a great partner through this regional plan development. And we just wanted to recognize that although there are options to fund multimodal projects today, it's not quite serving the needs of South Florida as we identified in our long-range plans. And then we do recognize here each dollar spent on transit will have greater impact on moving people than each dollar spent on highways. And the point here is that from an occupancy standpoint, we can have more occupants moving in one transit vehicle or a light rail car than we can in all individual vehicles. And the last element is very important to what I was saying before, recognizing that maintaining our roadway system or highway system is very important, and we can't abandon the infrastructure we've already invested in, and we must make sure that the funding is there to continue maintaining that system as needed. And the last policy, and then I'll be wrapping up with just one more slide, is that when we did our analysis at your 561 plan, the SMART plan in Miami and the started plan in Broward, that we would need new revenue sources over time to make that complete system available and operated over time. So we just recognize that here and that we're gonna need to seek funding really on all levels, and it's a group effort. And for the last slide,
Everybody's invited to the party.
yes, everyone's invited. So actually, that's a great segue. So everyone's invited to the party. We have a movefloridaforward.com website coming to you very soon. There's a group of us that have all gotten on board to do this outreach with chambers of commerce, counties, cities, Visit Florida group, all Brightline. We're going out there and we're going to be seeking resolutions of support like we're doing today with you. And for organizations that don't do resolutions, we have letters of support that we're going to go out there and collect. And as I said in the beginning, the CEFTEC members previously committed to go to Tallahassee to speak to the Secretary of the Department of Transportation and also state representatives to start the discussion on some of those policies that need to really happen at the state level. So with that,
Excellent.
again, it's an honor to be able to present this to you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we take questions from members of the board, do we have any requests from the public on this particular agenda item?
Yes, Chair, we do have one public comment. Let me just check virtually. So it's just one in-person public comment.
Hi, my name is Matthew Van Voorthuizen. I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing to try to move us in the right direction. There are a couple things that came up that I was thinking about, and one is the association between walking and bicycling. I feel like that needs to be emphasized a little bit more because I don't know if you look around on the sidewalks, you see most of the bicyclists are not on the roadways. They are on sidewalks sharing the space with the pedestrians. And because of that, I think we really need to think about it as like almost like one thing.
All right, thanks.
We're walking and we're bicycling in the same space. And so along with that, I think it would be very, very wise for us to emphasize facilities that will support both walking and bicycling, like shared use pathways and wider sidewalks. I would love to see us repurpose the wasted space that cars do not really need on the streets and use that to make the sidewalks wider. I'd also like to see the right-of-ways of canals, I-95, railways. These are places where the space is already there. All we need to do is pave it, and then we can use it for pedestrians and bicyclists to get around. I think it's particularly interesting on I-95, cars have a great way to get from one interchange to the next, but bicyclists and pedestrians often have to go a mile out of their way just to get to the same place. Also, I thought it was interesting, we're only spending 4% on complete streets, and there is a dollar impact. If we were to increase the 4%, we would have a lot more impact than if we were to spend more money on accommodating cars. And I guess the last thing, a couple more things here. The first and last mile we talked about, I just looked on my phone. Tri-Rail is about 0.6 miles away from this building right here. And I would expect that most people wouldn't even want to walk that distance. So to say the first and last mile is kind of a little too long for people who are walking. But if we consider bicyclists as well, a 2-mile bike ride is not really that bad, especially if there's trees and we don't have to worry about cars running us over. So hopefully we can invest in that. I guess the last thing is the continuing support for cars. Right now, cars are costing us way more than drivers are actually paying for the services they're getting. And so I would love to see tolls increased and introduced where they're not to help
Sir, your time
make
has
that
expired.
more fair.
Okay, thank you for the comment, sir. I would just like to clarify something that he referenced. It was a discussion about the first and last mile. And it may be a terminology that perhaps many people have not heard before, but what the first and last mile concept means is individual cities or municipalities will accept ownership for providing solutions to get their citizens from their door to wherever that transportation hub requirement is. And then when the people come back to that hub, there's a solution in place provided by the city to get them from there back to their front door. Bottom line is, it means that it provides the opportunity for citizens to get to where they want to go in a very timely and efficient manner without having to drive their car. So I just wanted to clarify that, because that's an important concept going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have
another
Commissioner, no public comments, but I do have Commissioner Balashay and Vice Mayor
All
White.
right, if there are no further comments from the public, then I want to close public comment on this agenda item, and whoever was first, please let's recognize them.
So I had Commissioner Balashay as first.
So I wanted to ask you, apart from Tri-Rail, how many trips that are generated within the region terminate in a different county from one that they started in?
I don't have the ridership number that crosses county lines, but I can certainly get that to you.
Okay, because, I'm a big supporter of Contran and Tri-Rail, of course, but, and we're working towards fair interoperability between all three counties. Is it ever going to become more logical to create, I know it's politically difficult, a regional bus service where there aren't three separate counties, the resources can be shared more equitably and efficiently? I know it would be a heavy lift, but is that something that anybody is talking about yet?
Yes, I've actually had the pleasure of working with the regional group since 2008, and that has come up in discussion. Like you said, it's a bit sensitive. I don't think you use the word sensitive, but I perceive it sensitive. I will say though, as we look ahead to the 2050 plan, I'd be happy, and I'm sure Executive Director Uren would be happy to bring that thought back to the SEPTEC and have it be a discussion item as we look ahead to 2050. I think, just personally speaking with some folks, I won't mention their names, long-term, I think that's probably going to happen. I could see long-term. I don't know if we'll witness it in our lifetimes, but it has come up. But it's not discussed a lot or frequently, I'd say.
Thank you.
And Vice Mayor White.
Thank you. I just wanted to let our guests know that at our last meeting, we were addressing bicyclists to a great degree in one of our projects in Boca Raton. And certainly this body is cognizant of the needs of the biking and the walking public. One of our missions is a Vision Zero, which says that we would like not to have anybody die on our roads. And while I have railed against that mission as being kind of unrealistic, it certainly is something to aspire to. And unless and until we're able to protect our public that is using our roadways without the protection of a motor vehicle around them, we're never going to reach Vision Zero. As far as this plan put in front of us today, I would want to look outside the box a little bit. And I think one of the things we've learned through this pandemic is that there's a lot that can be accomplished virtually. And so I think that we need to be also addressing the broadband implications of our new normal. And the commission has, through our CARES dollars, been able to invest a significant amount of money into broadband, essentially because of the disparity that's been caused in education between people with and without broadband access. But the same goes for employment opportunities. People with broadband access have better availability of employment opportunities. And I think that as we are looking in the future, we're going to see people that are not necessarily going to be traveling on our highways, but are going to be traveling virtually. And so I think that in our overall review of what our roads are going to look like between now and 2050, we cannot be escaping the fact that many of our stakeholders will stay home and be traveling virtually to whatever their destination is. So I think that has to be part of this overall, study of how we get people more efficiently from point A to point B.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent feedback. And we're looking, like I was mentioning, the 2050, we're looking at scoping that probably starting early next year. I won't be scoping it because I'll hope to have a chance to pursue it. But the TPA and the other MPOs will be, so we can give that feedback for that effort as well. Curious how our future is impacted long-term by this pandemic.
Any other comments from members on the board?
I don't see any, Mr. Chair. I'm just double checking.
Okay, going once, going twice.
So we are seeking a motion.
Yeah, well, if there are no further comments from the board, then at this time, I'd like a motion to approve a resolution directing FDOT, I'm reading the wrong item.
So moved. Yeah,
Second.
All right, I'm ahead of us. Supporting the Southeast Florida Transportation Council 2045 Regional Transportation Plan.
So I had a motion by Vice Mayor Weinroth and a second by Mayor Flores.
Roll call?
Yes, sir.
Please do. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll take roll call now.
Yes, and just for the record, the motion on the floor is to adopt a resolution supporting the Southeast Florida Transportation Council 2045 Regional Transportation Plan. I will have staff assist board members in unmuting if you can do it on your end as well. And Mayor Wilson, as a reminder, it is *6 on your side. Joseph Anderson, I believe he is still absent. Mac Bernard,
Yes.
Joni Brinkman,
Yes.
Joel Flores,
Yes.
Stephen Grant,
Yes.
Jim Koretsky,
Yes.
Douglas Lawson, I believe, is still absent. Carl Woods, I believe, is still absent. Melissa McKinley,
Yes.
Michael Napoleon,
Yes.
Corey Neary, Steve Wilson. I'm sorry, Mayor, can you unmute on your end? I will do your vote now so that way we can meet you again. Steve Wilson,
Yes.
thank you. I'm sorry to go back. Corey Neary, we may have been disconnected from him again. Joseph Peduzzi, I believe, is still absent. Shelley Petrolia,
Yes.
Fred Pinto,
Yes.
Scott Singer,
Yes.
Andy Thompson,
Yes.
Pam Triola,
Yes.
Al Valashay,
Yes.
Robert Weinroth,
Yes.
Greg Weiss,
Yes.
and I just want to confirm if Commissioner Neary rejoined us. I'm still showing that he's absent. It passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
All right, so all members who were present and participated in the vote voted yes.
Yes, sir. It was 16-0.
Okay, so let the record show that this motion was approved unanimously by those present. Thank you. And thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, continue the good work. All right, now we are on item C, 2C, which is a resolution directing the FDOT to modify the recommended alternative for the I-95 for alternative for I-95 at Woodward Wright Road interchange from the project development and environmental study. And we're going to have a presentation. Is it remote?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
From Juliana?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Yes. Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am, you're on. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Julieta Manso. I'm with Hanson Professional Services, and I'll be presenting the I-95 at Woodbury Road PD&E study. With me on the line, it's Anson Sonnet representing FDOT, and Jeff Easley, he's the consultant project manager for the project. So the interchange of I-95 at Woodbury Road is located within the city of Boynton Beach in Palm Beach County. Our project limits extend along I-95 from just south to just north of Woodbury Road, and along Woodbury Road from Southwest 18th Street to Southwest 2nd Street. I-95 within our project limits is a 10-lane divided interstate, and Woodbury Road is a 6-lane divided west of I-95 and 5 lanes with a 2-way left turn lane east of I-95. We have the South Florida Rail Corridor, CSX, that runs parallel to I-95 on the west side of the interchange. A design build project was completed for this interchange in 2019, which included widening of Woodbury Road over I-95 to provide 1 additional left turn lane into the I-95 northbound and southbound. It also added bicycle lanes over the I-95 bridge. Sorry, I went too far. Go back. Okay. So the purpose of the study is to address traffic spillback onto I-95, reduce congestion on I-95 and Woodbury Road within the interchange, improve interchange operations, and improve safety through the year 2045, which is the design horizon that we have for the project. And the need for the project was established based on system linkage, capacity, transportation demand, modal interrelationship, and safety. An existing crash analysis was conducted as part of the study. We look at the last 5-year crash history for the I-95 main lane, the I-95 ramps, and Woodbury Road within the project corridor. Based on the results from the crash data, we determined that most of the crashes are associated with the heavy congestion along the 3 segments that we evaluated, being the rear end collisions the most predominant crash type along the project. This slide shows the existing year traffic conditions. So on the box on the top, we're showing the lane configuration at each of the intersections that we evaluated, which includes Southwest 8th Street intersection, southbound ramp terminal intersection, and northbound ramp terminal intersections with I-95. And on the aerial, we're showing the delay and level of services at each of these intersections. So on the top little boxes, we have, in this case, the green boxes represent the AM values, and the bottom boxes, which in this case are yellow, represent PM. So for the 3 intersections, we have levels of service C in the AM peaks and levels of service D in the PM peaks. Based on the no action or no build analysis for the year 2045, our traffic projections at the 3 intersections are represented here for the year 2045 with levels of service F and E at the Southwest 8th Street intersection, levels of service D and E at the ramp terminal intersections. As part of the alternatives analysis evaluation, we evaluated the no build alternative, and we also looked at 3 different build alternatives. As part of the 3 build alternatives, we have alternative 1, which was maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange configuration that we have today. Alternative 2 included an evaluation of a diverging diamond interchange. And alternative 3, we looked at a single point urban interchange. We presented all 3 alternatives at an alternatives public workshop that was conducted virtually in July 22nd. And we also had an open house so that people were able to access and view files and the concepts for the 3 alternatives. Based on the evaluation of the 3 alternatives, we selected a preferred recommendation, which is alternative 1, which includes maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange configuration. So on this slide, we have the representation of how the tight diamond interchange configuration looks like. So the improvements as part of this alternative include widening Woodbury Road over I-95 to provide 1 additional through lane in each direction. As part of that widening, we're also widening the bridge over the South Florida Rail Corridor to provide for that additional widening. And we're widening the northbound and southbound off-ramps to provide 1 additional left turn lane, making those triple lefts. Improvements at the intersection of Southwest 8th Street include adding 1 additional westbound through lane through the intersection and adding 1 additional left turn lane in the eastbound and westbound directions to provide dual left turn lanes at the intersection. These improvements at the Southwest 8th Street intersection will require widening of the bridge over the E4 canal, which is located just west of the intersection. I know this concept is a little hard to see, but we also have a board that we can display after the presentation if we want to go over some of the improvements. As part of this alternative, we're also extending the bicycle lanes that are now ending after the bridge over I-95. We're extending that to Southwest 18th Street. This slide shows the widening of the bridge over I-95 and the bridge of the South Florida Rail Corridor. The previous widening that was completed as part of the recent design build project was done on the north side of the bridges. As part of our bridge analysis, we determined that the existing structures are in good condition, so we can widen now the bridges on the south side, kind of mirroring what was done previously with the design build. So on the right side of the image, you can see the additional widening that will be required for the bridges. Because of the widening of Southwest 8th Street intersection and to accommodate for the bicycle lanes along Woodbury Road, we will be widening the bridge over the E4 canal on the north side. There is an existing pedestrian bridge along the north side on a separate structure. The widening will accommodate for that sidewalk to be part of the widening of the existing bridge. The traffic analysis for the 2045 year for the preferred alternative is shown on this slide. As you can see, the proposed improvements will improve the operations at all three intersections, bringing the level of service at the Southwest 8th Street intersection to E in the AM and D in the PM, and levels of service C for the southbound ramp terminal intersections, and level of service C and D for the northbound ramp terminal intersections. This picture shows right-of-way impacts associated with the preferred alternative. We are required about 2,000 square feet of right-of-way for improvements at the Southwest 8th Street intersection. And these impacts are located on the southwest quadrant of the intersection. There's no impact to any structures or any parking as part of these improvements. As I just mentioned, one business property will be having right-of-way impacts. There's no business damage or relocations identified as part of these improvements. And for the cost estimate, we identified a construction total cost of $17 million for the project, which include about $1.5 million in right-of-way and $12 million for the roadway construction. We started this project at the end of 2018. We had an agency and public kickoff meeting back in May of 2019. And as I mentioned, we also had an alternatives public workshop in July of 2020. We've met with the city of Boynton Beach prior to our public kickoff meeting and prior to our alternatives public workshop to start the communication and to present the alternatives that we were going to show to the public. We also met with members of the TPA before the alternative workshop to present the alternatives. And now that we selected a preferred alternative, we presented to the TPA committees last week. When we started this project, we had an anticipated class of action for the PD&E of a categorical exclusion type 2. After we have selected a preferred alternative after a public workshop, and given that we're just maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange and we don't have any major improvements, the project is being reclassified as a categorical exclusion type 1. And what this means is just that the project is still moving forward, but we are not required to have a public hearing. So the project will be closing the PD&E phase soon, and the design phase will continue, which is scheduled to begin early next year. Since we're not having a public hearing for this project, we will be preparing a newsletter mailed out that we'll send out to the community and members of our mailing list to let them know that an alternative has been selected. And we'll also gonna keep the website updated in case people have any comments or questions, and the project will move to the design phase. As I mentioned, we presented to the TPA committees last week. So we received a few comments from the different committees, which we're evaluating and we're planning on incorporating into our design phase for the project. So with that, I would like to open the floor if there are any discussions, and we can also have the concept. Margie, if you can put it on the display just in case somebody has any questions, we can go over those.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Before I go to public comment though, did you want to add anything to this presentation? Nick?
Mr. Chair, we have a few slides to illustrate the suggested modifications in the agenda, but we don't need to present them.
No, that we need to share. Or the board is
It's
familiar.
really at your request.
Well, if everyone on the board is familiar with them already, you had a chance to review it, and we don't need to go over it again. So to make sure we get a chance to get that information out to all board members. But more importantly, we shared it with FDOT.
We have.
And what is your feeling on their potential of acceptance of those recommendations?
Well, I think as Julieta just mentioned, the DOT presented to our advisory committees and heard requests for change to the project. And the DOT is evaluating the requests. I think the question for the TPA board is, do you want to collectively send a message to the DOT saying these changes need to be incorporated into the project to enhance the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists traveling through the interchange? And that's what we as staff are recommending to the TPA board. We're saying we've heard enough from our advisory committees that these changes ought to be endorsed by the TPA board as direction to DOT to make them part of the project.
Okay. I'd like us to have obviously discussion on this from the board, but before that, do we have members from the public who choose to comment on this agenda item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have one in-person public comment. I don't see any virtual hands raised besides our board members.
Okay.
Do you need this one?
Hello, my name is Matthew Van Voorthuizen. I was here last week for the Bicycle Trailways Pedestrian Advisory Committee when they discussed this project. And I appreciate that they did address one safety hazard presented by the free flow lanes by recommending the pedestrian activated signals. I am disappointed that they failed to consider several important details. From what I understand, the goal of the project is to reduce rear end collisions by making more room for cars. While I appreciate the lofty goal of the engineers, the typical behavior of a driver that gets into a rear end collision demonstrates that his or her priority is not avoiding a crash, but rather getting through a traffic jam as quickly as possible. Making more room for this sort of driver will not reduce crashes. It will only serve to increase them. If we truly care about reducing rear end collisions, we should replace all of our traffic signals with stop signs. The core of downtown West Palm Beach, which has 0 traffic signals, has demonstrated that stop signs are safer, more efficient, and less costly. But unfortunately, it appears that engineers have an addiction to traffic lights, and that addiction only gets worse when we keep widening the roads. The free flow lanes at Woolbright Road and elsewhere are some of the most dangerous components of any intersection design, and will continue to be so until they are eliminated completely. Drivers in a free flow lane are not accustomed to having to stop. When they do have to stop, they are typically driving at high speed and looking toward the left as they turn to the right. And somehow we expect them to notice the bicyclists, pedestrians, and cars in front of them. I don't see how that makes any sense. The hazards of free flow lanes continue even beyond the intersection. Anytime we don't require drivers to stop as they approach an intersection, we give them a sense of entitlement as if they have sole rights to the pavement they're traveling on. They feel like they are on an expressway and they fail to respect the other users of the street. For a solution to the free flow lanes, please consider the interchange at 10th Avenue North, which previously had free flow lanes similar to those at Woolbright Road. Now, every lane at 10th Avenue North is governed by traffic signals. This helps drivers get accustomed to actually stopping for the intersection. Stop signs would be even better though. It is amazing that we can consider spending $17 million on a project that has little hope of actually improving the situation, while according to the Federal Highway Administration, that money could pay for 65 miles of shared use pathway for bicyclists and pedestrians. That's way more than what's necessary to get from the nearest interchanges to the north and south. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you for your comments, sir. All right, is there no further comments from members of the public, either here or remote?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, then I'm going to close public comment on this agenda item 2C. And open up for conversation and discussion from members of the board. We have 2.
I have 2 virtual comments. And did you have your hand raised? Okay. So I have Mayor Grant first, followed by Councilmember Thompson.
Okay, Mayor Grant.
Thank you. I spoke with Nick about this, and the two amendments that I would like to make to the resolution is that under section 2A is that we include a shared use path. This road is 40 miles per hour with up to 5 lanes at the intersections. I don't think a bike lane is appropriate, mainly because I've ridden my bike and there was no way I'm going to ride a beach cruiser on that type of road at 40 miles per hour. I was riding it to the Little League field. And so I feel that we're not trying to encourage children or people under the age of 18 to ride on the roads. We would want them to be at least protected a little bit with the sidewalk curb. And so that's one of my major concerns with this project. I am aware of FDOT's concerns that the left turn lane north onto Southwest 8th Street, it does back up. And so there is that valid concern because it is a thoroughfare to Boynton Beach Boulevard without having to go on to 95. Plus there are many different shops and residences there and the Leisureville community. So I feel that we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the pedestrian bicyclists safe. My other concern is that if someone's trying to cross Woolbright now with the 10 lanes and the medians, that is going to cause more of a problem. I feel the data that they collected is skewed because that is when the city of Boynton Beach started its red light program. And so with that, of course, there's going to be a lot more rear end collisions when you start a red light program because people are starting to stop running red lights. We look at the number of crashes, we don't look at the damage of crashes. And that's something that I'd like to see changed. FDOT failed to bring back any sort of pedestrian data for our recommendation as well to see exactly how many times people use that. In that data, we only looked at cars. So it's kind of tough to make a decision on what to do for pedestrian bicyclists when we don't have that information. However, we kind of figure that the more opportunities you give pedestrian bicyclists to be safe, the more opportunities more of them will be there. And so that's kind of where, I don't know if the board is willing to table this to next meeting so that we could get some data regarding the pedestrian bicyclists. Normally just asking the county to see how many times someone pushes the cross signal, because I don't feel anyone would cross either of these lanes without pushing the cross signal first. And the other aspect of the right-of-way and the expansion is the enhanced landscaping according to Florida statute that is required. In Boynton Beach, FDOT has spent millions of dollars for their roadway constructions and projects, and we have not received any money regarding enhanced landscaping. I don't know how the rest of the cities feel, but I feel that if FDOT is doing construction within our city limits, we are hoping that they would spend that required amount for enhanced landscaping in those cities. And so those are my comments. And so I would like to add a section C to that the statutory requirements for enhanced landscaping to be spent within the city limits of Boynton Beach. And so I'll make a motion to amend as stated regarding section 2A and section 2C.
I want to give Nick a chance to comment on your modification, motion recommendation, and the other point about the statutory funding for landscaping.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be helpful if I opened a brief presentation and just walked the board through what was just presented. Okay. So we're going to talk through just a handful of slides, 3, I think. The first slide deals with the question of, Alyssa, go ahead and click forward. The first slide deals with what we think is a supportable modification by the DOT and appropriate, consistent with our Vision Zero. It's the installation of pedestrian actuated beacons at all 4 of the crosswalks on the unsignalized ramps, the free flow ramps. What we want to say here is install a device that tells drivers you have a legal obligation to yield to the pedestrians or the bicyclists that are using that crosswalk. This is consistent, as we mentioned last month, with DOT's own guidelines for design of ramp interchanges. This is consistent with the TPA's policy of Vision Zero, protecting those vulnerable users. We think this one makes sense. There's no real discussion on it. So we'll go to the next slide. The second question that Mayor Grant raised was that the DOT's design intends to provide a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot bike lane on both sides of the road. Actually, on the wider bridge side, they may have a 6-foot sidewalk over the bridge on 95. The suggestion here is that the bike lane may not be as useful to users of all ages and abilities when you're placing a bicycle facility next to higher speed vehicular traffic through an interchange. The bicyclists that are uncomfortable in that environment will tend to use the sidewalk anyway. And so a commitment to an all ages and abilities outcome would suggest that instead of providing a sidewalk and a bike lane, let's provide a 10-foot wider sidewalk. We'll call it a sidewalk because the phrase shared use path unfortunately carries design consequences for the DOT, and we don't want them to significantly widen the bridge. We just want them to use the space that they are committed to constructing in a way that promotes safety for the majority of our traveling public. And so our suggestion is, in lieu of the bike lane sidewalk side by side, let's just do a very wide sidewalk, take up that 10 feet and accommodate both a pedestrian and a bicyclist in that wider space. I think that was Mayor Grant's first modification. The second modification regarding the landscape is illustrated on the following slide. If you look at the interchange area, on the left side of this slide is the landscape condition in 2013. When the interchange was previously modified, the bridge over I-95 was widened to the north and the on and off ramps were widened to accommodate additional vehicle lanes. That resulted in the removal of those 4 landscape areas as noted in the 2013 aerial photograph. Now the DOT has identified a desire to widen the bridge over I-95 to the south and to further widen the off-ramps to accommodate more turn lanes for vehicles. That will result in the removal of the remaining 4 landscape areas within the interchange boundaries. And so Mayor Grant's suggestion is that this landscaping ought to be restored, that we shouldn't be just chopping down all the trees in order to provide additional travel lanes for vehicles. There is residual space potentially within the project that could be utilized, as I've highlighted in the green spaces in the 2020 aerial, that could be utilized for the installation of what could be described as enhanced landscaping within the interchange project. And then Mayor Grant was referring to the statutory obligation of the department to spend 1.5% of its overall work program dollars on landscaping on a statewide basis, and then that criteria is applied in each of the 7 DOT districts. It's not traditionally applied on a project level. So there's not an obligation of the DOT to install landscaping with 1.5% of the project by project budgets for individual items. They look at on a district-wide level and say, have we met the minimum criteria established by the legislature for all projects within the district? Mayor Grant's suggestion, which I think, as we're illustrating with this aerial, removing the trees, is appropriate in this case to say, let's make sure that that landscape budget is expended within the limits of this project to restore the trees that were removed in order to accommodate the cars and to provide a more enhanced experience, aesthetically pleasing landscape experience within the project limits. And so if we go to this last slide, the 2 modifications that I think Mayor Grant proposed in his discussion were in the resolution section A, instead of saying it can be either a continuous shared use path or buffered bike lanes, he's suggesting reasonably that it should just be a shared use path. And then number C, or item C rather, is the request that DOT restore the landscaping that is being removed by this project within the interchange limits.
Okay. I guess my question to you, Nick, is
And Mayor, I'm sorry, Chair, can you move your microphone closer?
I'm sorry, is that okay?
Yes.
Are you in your staff at a point where you absolutely can recommend this to the board?
You know, once Mayor Grant and I started talking about the impact that the previous widening had on the existing landscaping that was there prior to 2013, and then we looked at the probable impacts of this additional widening on the residual landscaping, I have no problem supporting item C. Item A, I think it's appropriate if we are trying to fit within a narrow profile, we're trying to minimize the amount of additional construction that we're doing on the bridge. And there are actually two bridges involved. There's the bridge over the railroad and then the bridge over I-95. Both are relevant in this case. We're trying to minimize the additional bridge construction, and we want to use that area as efficiently as possible. I think a shared use path through the interchange makes a great deal of sense. And there's one element, Alyssa, if you'll go back to the typical section for just a moment, there's one element that I want to mention. And I'm going to acknowledge it's going to be hard to see because it's a minor detail, but it's an important one when you're actually navigating the bridge. Traditionally, there is a separator constructed between the outside edge of the bike lane and the sidewalk. So the bicycle facility is adjacent to traveling vehicles. What we're proposing in this modification is not only that the bike lane be combined with the sidewalk to be a wide sidewalk, but that the barrier now be relocated to be between that wider sidewalk and the traveling vehicular lanes to provide an additional level of safety for the non-motorized users through the interchange. That's something that we are working with the DOT on the US 1 bridge over the Port of Palm Beach, and it's something that we think should be incorporated as a standard for bridge construction going forward to provide that safer environment for the bicyclist who is maybe less aggressive, less comfortable riding adjacent to a high-speed vehicle. So yes, short answer to your question, yes, we are comfortable supporting these modifications.
Okay, very good. We have other members of the board wanting to comment.
Yes, sorry. Yes, Mr. Chair. I have Councilmember Thompson followed by Commissioner Weiss.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I once again, I applaud the TPA staff for bringing these kinds of modifications to our attention and proposing them, because I think they make a lot of sense, just the same as they did about a month ago when we were discussing proposed modifications to the DDI interchange at Glades Road in the city of Boca. These are similar kinds of modifications that will make things safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And just like the board took affirmative action last month to approve these types of modifications to FDOT, I think we should do the same here today. So I support the modifications as originally proposed. And now that I've heard Mayor Grant and our executive director are both on board with the slight modifications, I'm on board with that as well and plan on supporting it. And I think everyone should.
Thank you, sir.
And Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is in regards to with the shared use sidewalk. Is there signage that's put in place advising the bicyclists that is an alternative for them? How's that done?
The short answer is yes. The on-road signage would acknowledge that there is not a bicycle lane adjacent to the vehicular lane, and that bikes are permitted to use the shared use path or the wider sidewalk through that area. Yeah.
It would be a sign that would say they're permitted. Would it be a recommendation? I mean, I agree. I like the idea, but I just want to make sure that the bicyclists are informed that this is there for them and that this is their preferred. That should be their preferred path, and so that they don't end up outside and then they're much closer to traffic.
Let me investigate the MUTCD signage for this kind of facility, but I believe that there is a sign available to designate for the bicyclists that they belong on the shared use path through the interchange.
Good, good. Otherwise, I think these are good additions to the project.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on the board?
I have Mayor Grant with his hand raised again.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Weiss, for making that suggestion, because I think the bicyclists need to know that they are to yield to the pedestrians, just like the bicyclists, or just like vehicles are supposed to yield to bicyclists and pedestrians on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the board would like to comment?
No, Mr. Chair, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, before I move to a motion, I want to just, because of this discussion, obviously it looks like we're going to have a modified motion presented. I want to give FDOT a chance if they'd like to make a final comment. Is she still out there?
I believe she is.
Good morning. This is Anson Sonnet with FDOT. I'm a project manager. I'm filling in for Umberto Arieta, who's out today. I have no comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, with that, and since there's no further discussion from members of the board, can someone craft a modified motion here based on what we discussed?
Chair, I believe I created that motion after I was finished speaking the first time. Nick, or Margie, do you have that on record?
Yes, Mayor Grant, we did have that you made a motion to amend the resolution with your comments, and I can have Alyssa pull the resolution on the screen.
The three specific components, so that we need to have included, right?
Correct. With the TPA, I stated within the city limits, but I am okay with the TPA's recommendation within the interchange limits. So I'd like to move as amended based upon the TPA's recommendation.
That's sufficient.
Alyssa, can you put that slide back on the screen so that the rest of the board can see the language?
And then, I'm sorry, it must be a technical issue that's causing a delay.
Okay. We use the technical issues these days.
So, Mr. Chair, the motion would be to adopt the resolution in the packet with the modifications to section 2 of the resolution as shown on the screen right now.
Okay. Paul, is that sufficient for this resolution to be crafted?
And Paul, you may be muted on your end, so you will need to unmute.
I think that's sufficient. You've got the wording pretty clearly set forth what you want.
And appropriately entered into the record. Okay. With that, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I have a second by Commissioner Balashe.
That's right. I think 2 seconds.
Oh, yes, but I heard Commissioner Balashe
Okay.
before Mayor Triolo.
Okay.
So if we're ready, I will move forward with a roll call vote. Again, I will have my staff assist everyone with unmuting. I just want to confirm a couple changes. So I do have Joseph Anderson is absent, Mac Bernard. I will mark him as absent. Joni Brinkman. Yes. Joel Flores.
Yes.
Stephen Grant.
Yes.
Jim Koretsky.
Yes.
Douglas Lawson is absent. Carl Woods is absent. Melissa McKinley.
Yes.
Michael Napleon.
Yes.
Corey Nearing is absent. Joseph Paduzzi is absent. Shelley Petrolia.
Yes.
Fred Pinto.
Yes.
Scott Singer.
Yes.
Andy Thompson.
Yes.
Pam Triolo.
Yes.
Al Balashe.
Yes.
Robert Weinrob.
Yes.
Greg Weiss.
Yes.
Steve Wilson is absent. It passes unanimously with the members present.
Okay, please let the record show that the modified motion was approved unanimously and we sent to the record. Thank you. Okay, our next item is on to section 3. 3A, okay, this is an administrative updates that we received from our partner organizations or agencies. Do we have any DA partner organizations? We do.
I was going to say, I do have a hand raised as well.
Okay. A public comment or?
It is a member,
Okay, so
it is an agency,
we'll take
Palm Beach County Engineering.
Good morning, Todd Von Laren, Assistant County Administrator. Brief update on behalf of PalmTran. A few things that I just wanted to point out. One, PalmTran was awarded the American Public Transportation Association's prestigious Gold Award for their work on safety and security, mostly related to our PalmTran statistics and metrics that we look at to ensure some of our safety and our ridership. So something that I think we're very proud about that we wanted to share with you. To that regard as well, as we look at some of our other key indicators in PalmTran, one is obviously ridership. And the COVID-19 global pandemic has shown decreases in ridership across the board all throughout the country. But just to share with you our numbers, in September of 2020, we saw 489,466 passengers. That was compared to 775,392 for the same period in 2019, a decrease of 36.9% or just under 286,000 passengers. Also compared to the previous month, in August 2020, we had 589,756 passengers, which was a decline of 17%, just over 100,000. That was primarily due to the implementation of our fares again. We had suspended fares for quite some time during the pandemic. We implemented those, and so that's where we're seeing those numbers. And finally, I just wanted to point out that PalmTran is again partnering with Lamar Advertising and Susan G. Komen, Florida, and the Race for the Cure. We're putting in our pink buses a little bit earlier this year. They're debuting this month. We're going to have them on display at our board meeting next Tuesday. But we wanted to just draw some awareness to Breast Cancer Awareness Month this October, and to let you know that we'll be partners for the 30th anniversary of the Race for the Cure. That's going to be a virtual race on January 30th. So that's a quick PalmTran update for you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that update. I just want to say, reach out to the PalmTran leadership team and say congratulations. I think they've been doing a tremendous job, and believe me, the citizens really appreciate the work they put in to get us, to help us deal with this COVID-19 environment we're living and operating in. So thanks again, and continue the good job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I just wanted to add a note that the PalmTran will be offering free transportation on Election Day. So all of our constituents and stakeholders should take advantage. If they're going to go to the polls on the 3rd, they can get a free ride on PalmTran.
Thank you, Mr.
Outstanding. Very good. Excellent. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have,
county engineering?
yes, I do have
Okay.
modus and altered with Palm Beach County Engineering. Mo, you will need to unmute on your end.
Yeah, good morning. I am presenting on behalf of David Ricks, the county engineer. He wanted to share with you our findings in regards to traffic volume changes during the pandemic, as well as the crash experience that we have. I don't know if I can share my screen with you guys or.
We lost you.
As a participant, Mo, I don't believe you're able to share your screen.
Well,
if you'd like to.
That's fine. Then I read the information for you. We have about 50 count stations that we have been counting on them throughout the time that pandemic restrictions have started sometime in mid-March. And we have observed a reduction in traffic volumes on our routes bottoming down in mid or first week of April, where we had reduction in the tunes of 47% in traffic volumes. Now it rebounded to about 15% below the highest 2019 levels. However, we did another observation and analysis on the crash experience during the 3 months of April through June, comparing the crash reductions as well compared with the volume reductions between 2020 and 2019. And we observed that the crashes dropped by 59% in the month of April compared to 2019 levels, when traffic volumes dropped by 43% only for that month. In May, the crashes reduced by 37% versus 28% in traffic volume levels. And in June, the crashes were down by 27% compared with 18% reduction in traffic volumes. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Can I ask if it's possible you can get that report to Margie? She can get that out to all the board members. Sounds like interesting information. Okay.
Sorry.
And
Would like to make a report?
I have no other partner agencies that would like to make a report. I did receive a public comment card on this. We don't normally receive public comments. This is a time for our partner agencies to make comments.
Well,
if you'd like to hear.
Always want to hear from the public.
Okay, I just wanted to note that for the record. Sir, if you can please come to the podium.
Thank you for letting me speak on this as well. My name is Matthew Van Voorheisen. I just wanted to point out some of the things that caught my attention. First of all, I thought it was interesting that as fares were implemented, ridership dropped. That's just a simple instance of supply and demand. And I think it's very unfair that for buses and trains, we're charging fares, but then drivers don't have to pay tolls on I-95. I really feel strongly that it would be appropriate to charge tolls on I-95, especially as electric cars are not paying any gas tax, and as cars are becoming more fuel efficient, they're paying less gas tax there as well. So how are we funding these highways other than from the general fund? We're subsidizing cars, and we really, for the amount of cost that driving has on society, we really should be asking the drivers to pay their fair share.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I will tell you, all of your comments today about fares on I-95, you just hit one of the key buttons that we really do need to consider. The alternative vehicles or driverless vehicles is upon us faster than I think a lot of people perceive. And it will have an impact on things like gas, use of gas being reduced, and what does that do to the tax structure? So thanks for your comments. All right, is that it? Anyone else?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. You want to say something? Oh, okay. I couldn't put it in your hand. All right. Okay, with that, we'll move to administrative items, which routine reports from members on the TPA. Do we have any? No? Other than it was been published.
Mr. Chair, we don't typically present these items. We just provide them for your information.
Just wanted to make sure of that.
Yep.
All right. Before I close out the meeting, I'd like to ask that our new vice chair makes comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I would like to thank the members for your confidence in electing me to be the vice chair. To my good friend, Mayor Grant, I think that in our next round, I will be nominating you for our CEFTEC representative. Our current CEFTEC representative has departed from our board, and so I know that you are eager to become more involved, and I certainly will be the first one to nominate you for that position. I also would like to point out that one of our veteran members here, this is going to be his last meeting. He's been with us for since I was on the city council. He's a former chair of our illustrious body, and I know as we have at our last meeting of the Solid Waste Authority, we are giving a nod to our colleague, Commissioner Valashay. We're going to miss your input and your support for public transportation, both at Tri-Rail as a board member over there and certainly as a colleague on the county commission and as a colleague here in the TPA. So thank you so much for your service, and we're going to miss you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, and I just want to thank all the staff here as well as my fellow board members. It's been a remarkable experience for me, both having been just a member, but also as chairman and vice chairman. I've learned a tremendous amount, for which I thank you, and I hope I've been able to add to the level of discussion that we've had here, and I'll miss it. So thank you again.
We'll be on the TV if you're bored.
I'm so glad that you did bring up Commissioner Balashay's status. I was going to cover that, but I just want to add that I personally enjoyed working with you, certainly with the board, and I'm certainly going to miss you being a member of the county commissioners. I think you brought invaluable insight and context and perspective that was important for us to have a balanced view about the different issues we have to address. I personally will continue to seek you out, sir, for your advice. So thank you very much. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, regarding our next board meeting, it is scheduled for December 17th. We do not have a meeting scheduled for November. And currently, our game plan is for the TPA committee board meetings, which are going to be coming up in intervening period. They will be done in person. That's based on current information and approximation on what's going to be happening and what new rules will or won't be changed. Regarding how we're going to conduct our meeting in December, stay tuned. If in fact we will no longer be allowed to do the virtual model, we will come up with an arrangement that I want everyone to still feel safe being in a confined environment and having that many people in the room at a time. So we will look at how we can do that in a way that helps everyone to be able to attend if that's the requirement and feel safe. But that's really the key. As we make it through this COVID-19 environment, it's not been pleasant in every case, and there are sacrifices that we've had to make, and we're not out of it yet. Even though the ground rules are changing, we have not reached the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So, so stay tuned on how we're going to address that at our next meeting. I thank all of you for being here today, and all of you who attended remotely. I appreciate it. I appreciate your input. And with that, we stand adjourned.